I fired my younger brother from my company, Carrot, and that is the very thing that ended up helping him grow one of the most innovative, fastest growing brands in all of sports. In this episode of the Entrepreneur Freedom Formula, I'm going to walk you through why I fired my younger brother, first of all, 8 years ago from my company. Number two, the 3 core lessons that I wanted to teach him that he had to learn by leaving my company to help him thrive as a new entrepreneur. And I want to help you make that mindset shift on if you're trying to start a company or you want to start a company or you're struggling with it. You make these 3 shifts that can really set you on the path to having success for yourself. So 8 years ago, my younger brother, Kyle, he came to work for me here at Carrot. Now, Carrot was, of course, a budding early company at that time. I don't even know if we had hit $1 million a year in revenue at that time. We were probably pretty early on. And I needed some help. I needed some help on the customer support side. And then I needed some help kind of on the marketing side. And he worked for me for a better part of a year or so. And it was amazing working with my brother. He's extremely smart. But he had this idea, he had this business idea that he was always kind of batting back and forth mentally in his mind. And as we were going, as I was setting a bigger vision for Carrot, I knew that the vision I had for Carrot wasn't the vision he had for himself. And so I'm going to walk you through why I made the decision to actually fire my brother, how I did that, and then the 3 lessons that helped pave the path so he could step into being an amazingly successful entrepreneur today. Okay. So I'm going to kind of bring you up to the present right now. Okay. So Carrot, we have been Inc. 505,000, 5 years, on the list, which is rarefied air. We've grown an 8-figure business on the software side of things. And then my brother's company is a multiple 8-figure a year company. I'm not going to share revenues, but I can tell you it's growing insanely fast. Dick's Sporting Goods invested into the company, which they've only done that with a handful of companies. And we were able to lure over one of the top executives from Under Armour into this business as the COO. Okay. I'm setting the stage because this business is insanely successful. It keeps growing faster and faster every year. But when Kyle came to work for me, he came to work for me because he knew I needed help, but also he needed a paycheck. And while we were doing the work, I discovered he's really good at this work, but his heart wasn't there. And so this was going into the Christmas season or so. I don't remember the exact year. I could find the emails, but where he had this side hustle going of a t-shirt business. And this t-shirt business created really kind of cool t-shirts with people wrapped around charities and causes. Then they would donate the money to charity or half the money to charity. It wasn't really making enough money to pay his bills, but he had this desire. He had this passion. He wanted to build something. But we sat down at the end of that year. And as I was looking at the vision for Carrot and where I could see him fitting into the vision at Carrot as well, I started to ask those questions, started to dig in, and discovered that while he enjoyed the work with Carrot and he was highly valuable in what he did there, his heart was in starting something new. Now, you may be in this position right now. You might be in that spot where you're like, man, I have this job, but I really want to do this other thing, right? I've got this job, but I really want to make my side hustle my main thing. Or I've tried a couple things and they're just not working. I don't have enough to pay my bills on my business. So therefore, I'm just kind of not ready to go start my own thing. It's too risky. And so in that time, when Kyle and I were working together, I gave him kind of an ultimatum. I said, Kyle, is your heart in this business? Is your heart in Carrot, or is your heart in your business? And he said, yeah, I mean, I enjoy the work here at Carrot, but my heart truly is in starting something over here. I said, amazing, dude. That's awesome. I feel that you having a job here at Carrot is actually preventing you from chasing your dream. And I need someone who's fully committed in this role. And so I gave him, I think it was 90 days, or I gave him until April 1st. And this was at the end of the year. And I said, okay, Kyle, as of April 1st, you won't have a job here anymore. So that gives you 90 days to figure out how to make enough money in this business to pay your bills so you can chase that dream. Okay. So I'm going to introduce the 3 principles that were key for Kyle to go from me firing him and his job and struggling on his side hustle to growing once again a multiple 8-figure, fastest growing company in its space, most innovative growing company in its space, written about in the articles. Major League Baseball players in the World Series, the biggest in the game, are using the gear. How did that transpire? And how do you step into that fear? How do you step into any challenges you're having in getting your side hustle to turn into your main hustle? So here's three main things. Okay. The first thing is we have to remove plan B. One of the key things with my brother is by having that paycheck, by having that nice security blanket of the paycheck coming in every single month, it didn't force him to go solve the problem of making his business work. Okay. It made it so there was always a plan B. I can dabble in this new thing, but if it doesn't succeed, I can still pay my bills. Okay. I can try out some things. I'm not going to get too crazy on my bets because I don't have a lot of money, but you know what? I'll try a couple things, but if they don't work, I can go back on this job, on this paycheck. The second we have a plan B, y'all, is the second we've already lost. Now, there might be people on here who are saying, well, Trevor, you've got to have a plan B. You've got to have something to lay out if this doesn't work. I think we should have plan B on projects. I think we should have plan B on a lot of things. I don't think we should have plan B if we're trying to start a business and that business is our passion. We truly want to move away from a job or whatever it is. There is no plan B there. Okay. Because the second we have that, we fall back on that and we lean on that as the crutch. Remove it and you will have a much better chance of succeeding. And so your back needs to be against the wall. And that was a conversation I had with my brother. I said, Kyle, I don't think your back's against the wall. Like the second that you have to make sales because you have to pay your rent, because you need to buy groceries, because you need to buy gas, the second that you have to make sales, instead of just dabbling over here in creative land and doing all this creative stuff that doesn't make money, the second you have to make sales is the second that you will now start to focus on growing revenue, not just doing all this creative stuff that doesn't grow revenue. And in the early days as a business, the number one thing there's two things. The first thing you need to think about is, okay, what is a problem or a prospect that I'm passionate about serving? Like, who do I want to serve? Okay. I need to think about, well, how do I want to serve them? How do I want to help them? But as soon as you've identified something there, your very next thing is I need to focus on revenue. And revenue only happens when I have a product that actually solves a real problem and it's good. And then people are willing to trade their money in exchange for what you're willing to sell it for. There has to be an exchange. If there's no exchange, it means the value wasn't there, or you're not clear on what your offering is, or that the price was not right. Okay. You match those things, you will start to make revenue. So that's the very first thing. I gave him the 90 days. Now here's the next thing that pops up. When you think about revenue, I sat down with him. I said, okay, Kyle, so how much money do you need to go and make this business work? How much money do you need over the next year? Give yourself 12 months to make this business work, or at least give a go of it. And he did some quick math and he came up with a number. And the number was about $50,000. And so I go, great. That's your number one plan. Your number one plan is to come up with a way to make $50,000. Now, here's where the story gets crazy. Okay. A few weeks later, I get a call from my brother and he said, hey, dude, you're not going to believe this. But he goes, I got an email. I said, okay, tell me about this. He goes, I never check my spam, but this email came through spam and I just felt compelled to open it. And it was someone from GoDaddy, GoDaddy.com, when they used to do all those big Super Bowl commercials with Danica Patrick. And I said, okay. And he goes, well, I got an email from a casting director who said that I was nominated by somebody to be in this competition. And this competition is for a Super Bowl commercial. The prize for this thing is actually $50,000. And I'm going, this is insane, dude. So the number you set a couple weeks ago to make your business work over the next year is $50K. And now you're getting this email that the prize for this competition for the Super Bowl commercial is $50K. I'm like, what do we have to do? And so he said, well, I can take one person. We fly over to Charlotte, North Carolina. They're not telling us anything about what's going on, but somehow I was advanced through all these different stages of the interview process. I'm just put right in the finals. None of it made any sense. And so I didn't believe it until I literally got my plane ticket, and we hopped on a ticket to Charlotte, North Carolina. We landed. We're at a hotel directly across from the Charlotte Motor Speedway. And so we knew what was going on. And we're like, Danica Patrick, GoDaddy. This is going to happen. They didn't tell us about Danica Patrick, but we got there. There's the other contestants. And what the contestants were doing was they had to pitch their business idea to Danica Patrick while she was driving the race car with them in the passenger seat. And so we saw the whole thing. We had a chance to meet Danica Patrick. All the camera crews were out. He didn't end up winning that competition, but it showed him that when you put out that goal, when you put out that intention of the universe, the wild things happen to start to conspire to make it easier for you. Okay. And that set him off on that path to do what was my number 2 tip when you're looking to start a company and really increase your chances of succeeding. Number 1 is remove plan B. We removed plan B by me firing him, giving him 90 days to figure out how to make money. Number 2 is you've got to have quick early revenue. Even though he didn't earn that 50K and that prize, it got him thinking about it. It got him thinking about, okay, maybe there are some creative ways to turn into revenue. Maybe I need to get more clear in my product. Maybe I need to get more clear in my vision. And he started to create some products that got some early revenue, just enough to get by, right? Not enough to become a millionaire, not enough to have a whole lot of extra cash, just enough to get by. When you get just enough early revenue to get by, that buys you time to figure out the product, to figure out the market fit, to figure out the messaging. Now, I want to use the story to give you some hope, because both for myself and my brother, we weren't amazing successes on our first business or two. Okay, my first company, I bought my first piece of real estate in 2004 as a college student, but my first real company actually didn't come until 2008. That company made a few $100,000 a year. And it worked. Okay. So very grateful for that. Didn't become a millionaire from it, but I learned a lot. My next company, on the software side failed. Okay. 2010, I invested in another one with that same, co-founder. And that's amazingly wildly successful today, multiple 8-figure a year company that I've seen grow over this last decade. So that's 3 companies in now at that time that were mediocre at best. And then 1, if not 2 of them at that time were complete failures. And so then I shifted and pivoted to Carrot in 2014 or so. So now this is over 4 years into my journey. I found a way to get by. I found a way to make some money, right? I made some pretty good money as a 20-something-year-old kid, failed a couple times, pivoted, worked my butt off, didn't make any money at all in Carrot on my end. I didn't take a paycheck for 18 months because I just focused on adding value, creating amazing product, getting quick revenue, putting it back into product, putting it back into product, putting it back into product. 18 months to 2 years in, I finally started to take a paycheck. We scaled fast into one of the fastest growing companies in America 5 years in a row. Kyle's story was similar. Okay. After I fired him, he was on a journey trying several different businesses and doing anything he could do to create some momentum, create some revenue, create relationships over the next 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years. Okay. It took him about 4 to 6 years to work through several ideas before the big idea popped. So if it doesn't work for you in the first 6 months, if it doesn't work for you in the first year, no big deal. Just make enough revenue to get by. And there's a few different ways you can do that. Okay. So number 1, you can create an agency. That's something that I did early on. I created a small micro agency that we did search engine optimization and content and reputation management for big companies. I enjoyed the work, but I knew that wasn't going to be my long term, but I had a skill set and I knew I could get by with some consulting while I figured out my next business, which became Carrot. My brother, he did something similar. He was building websites for pro athletes, so they could raise funds for the causes that mattered. He was doing branding for some pro athletes. He was launching some miniature products here and there, and he did some consulting. All of these things were means to an end, but he did it so he could buy himself time. He didn't have to go back and get a job. He could make enough revenue to get momentum with it. Okay. Now that's the second principle. The third principle is we have to throw spaghetti on the wall. Okay. As you're buying time and getting enough revenue to come in so you don't have to go back and get that job to buy yourself time, we go, well, buy yourself time to do what? The biggest thing we need to focus on at this spot is, once again, going back to step 1, identifying who am I passionate about serving. Number 2, how do I want to serve them? What are their biggest problems that I think I can serve them with? Okay. And then number 3, I'm just going to test a bunch of things and throw spaghetti on the wall and see what sticks. And so that's one of the biggest things I'm always thinking about, whether it's a marketing campaign or whether it's a new business or new products. We have to throw ideas at the wall. Some are going to stick. The ones that stick, I call them bright spots. You scale those bright spots then. We look for things that are working in a micro level, then we step into them and scale them. The things that don't work, just get rid of them. Chalk it up as a learning experience and move on. Failure is a good thing in this way when we're throwing spaghetti in the wall. So he threw a lot of spaghetti in the wall. He was making t-shirts. He was, once again, starting consulting companies. He was looking for investment for one of his companies. And then one of the things that he threw on the wall was something I thought was one of the craziest ideas of all of the ideas he came up with. And it looked like the hardest idea to execute, the craziest, all that stuff. And the idea was this: He said, I've been thinking for years, like I wanted to build a baseball glove. And the baseball glove that he came up with was one that was an ice cream glove, like basically literally had ice cream like dripping off of it with sprinkles and stuff. And so I go, dude, who's going to wear that thing? Like, it sounds like a novelty. You might sell, a few hundred a year or something like that. But, how are you going to crack through with the big industries, with your Wilsons and your Rawlings and your Mizunos? How are you going to make it happen? But he saw this vision. He didn't know it was going to work, but he had a hunch that that's where baseball was moving, towards individuality, towards making stuff that looked cool. This is one of the gloves that he custom made for me with his business. And he threw that thing out there. He did a launch, he sold it out, and it started what became this amazingly fast growing, innovative, fun company that he's growing today. Okay. That one crazy idea, after dozens of other ideas that didn't stick, that one stuck. And then he took it and went deep. He made it the best quality product possible. He made the marketing amazingly good. He then cut off all of his other businesses. He said, hey, this thing over here that was helping me get by for the last few years, it's gone now. Okay. He's cut it off and got focused. After you throw spaghetti in the wall, you find the one thing that works. That's your big pumpkin. You cut everything else off, y'all, and you focus intently on that one thing over the next 5 to 10 years. Okay. So if you are struggling to start a company, if you want to start a company, haven't started, or if you're a year or 2 or 3 years in, you're like, man, I'm just barely getting by. Is this ever going to work? I want you to know the path that I went on, the path that my brother went on, were those exact 3 things. Okay. Number 1, get your back against the wall, remove plan B. That's going to make it so you can stick through the challenging times when you're trying to find the right spaghetti that sticks. Number 2, get early and quick revenue. Okay. Find ways to make money, even with side hustles, consulting, doing anything you can while you're working to get, to come up with new ideas to see what sticks. Number 3 is throw spaghetti on the wall, see what sticks. Scale the bright spots that work, get rid of the ones that don't, and then have insane focus over the next 5 to 10 years to build something special. So as I talk about this story, I'm insanely proud because number 1, just seeing my brother go through all those challenges. Literally a couple years before his company blew up, I remember being with him at my parents' house, and he was having meetings on the back porch with a big old cardboard box over the top of his computer as a sunshade. And that was his office as he's working hard and working with manufacturers and all this stuff. And so we all have to start somewhere. Okay. But those 3 steps, I think, can give you a massive advantage, massive momentum. And if you're struggling with something as you're starting a company, let me know. Comment in the box below. What are you struggling with? What's your biggest pain point? Okay. The vast majority of your success is going to land in the 6 to 8 inches between your ears. It's not the knowledge that you have. It's your ability to stick with it and remove plan B to make it work. All right, guys, if you enjoyed this episode, subscribe to the podcast or YouTube if you're watching the video here. And there's so much more that I've put together in the Entrepreneur Freedom Formula. So if you haven't had a chance to go back in the archives since we started this podcast and this YouTube channel earlier this year, dive into the archives. I've got my favorite marketing books that helped me make over $40 million. I've got my favorite copywriting books. I've got my processes on how to dial in your calendar and your schedule. My process called the Momentum Meter and how to get back to momentum if you feel like you're a little bit off, and everything about my Entrepreneur Freedom Formula. Check it out. Or you can get the written versions over at trevormauch.com/freedom. And as always, if you're in the real estate or home services space and you want to be able to grow your business, one that you don't despise, that you love, and scale up the way that you want to scale, head over to carrot.com/epic and apply for my high level coaching program for real estate professionals and home services professionals as well. Carrot.com/epic. We'll see you over there, guys. Have an amazing rest of the week.